I have an email, and sometimes I wish I didn't. Listen, my email is an incredible way to reach out to me, to tell me whether or not my content means something to you, or to tell me if you hate my content, or to email me a list of corrections from every single video I've ever posted. Yes, that has actually been sent to me. But by far and away, my favorite kind of email are theories. Well, good theories. Because as I parse through the unlimited amount of emails, people ask me to rate their Naruto own characters or help them build a Naruto TTRPG, occasionally, and I mean occasionally, I will find a diamond in the rough, a theory I can't help but love. And yesterday was one of those days. As I was parsing through my primary inbox, which basically is a spam folder at this time, I stumbled upon my diamond and the incredible rough that is my inbox. And it was a simple email that prosed its question in the subject with a blank email to follow. And that subject read just a few words. And those few words read, "Is Tenten a Senju?" With barely any information to go off, I had to extrapolate what they meant by this incredibly brief sentence. A question that could mean nothing or everything. See, because while to many people the idea of whether or not Tenten is a Senju is not important, because Tenten herself is not important. However, as I wrestled with this subject matter and pulled at the string that was this sentence, I couldn't help but find myself intrigued. See, because on the one hand, obviously, yes, we're making a YouTube video about Tenten, but on the other hand, we're talking about the Senju, a clan filled with the most relevant characters in Naruto, possibly being inhabited and represented by the mark of irrelevancy. And then as I pulled further and further along at this yarn of a sentence, I realized something. The theory itself isn't really about whether or not Tenten is a Senju. The theory is more symbolized by the ideology that the Senju have married so deeply into Konoha that they now exist as the Tentens of the world. The idea that once the greatest bloodline in the Naruto world has now become diluted to the point that it's represented by a woman running a failing weapon shop. I tossed and I turned all last night as the idea that Hashirama's bloodline has slowly become Tenten, and my brain, as it does, unfortunately, started to make some connections. See, there was no evidence attached to this email, just an idea, a bug drilling its way into the deepest part of my brain. I searched every internet browser I could find to see if there was anybody else talking about this connection, and yet nothing. Where did this idea come to me, shot down from heaven like Indra's arrow directly into my brain, to build out one of my most atrocious theories yet? And as I tried to reject this thought, knowing full well that nobody would click on a video about Tenten, the idea simply grew. Until eventually, like a teenage mother, I found myself with a project I wasn't quite sure I could handle. But it was to me this email was sent. It was I who pulled away at the string, and thus I bear the burden of responsibility for this project. And thus I present to you, is Tenten a Senju? Before we get to talking about whether or not Tenten is a Senju, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you like the idea of me staying up all night thinking about anime theories, you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. And if you just like the idea of me talking about anime, then you're gonna love my anime podcast, Who Talk is Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So, the question, is Tenten a Senju? It's kind of a loaded one. So your standard Naruto fan's quick trigger reaction would be no, of course not. How could Tenten, the mere mark of mediocrity, ever be a Senju? In fact, the Senju are stated to have some of the highest life force and chakra pools in all of Naruto, and Tenten is known for barely having any chakra. I mean, we saw this woman wield the Basho-sen, one of the 6 paths treasured tools. And while she was able to wield this legendary fan, she was only able to flap it twice, until she eventually ran out of chakra. Now that's saying something when you consider the fact that Kinkaku and Ginkaku have been wielding this somewhat endlessly for almost their entire lives. At least, that's what we believe. See, unfortunately, chakra isn't a quantifiable number. We don't have Naruto has 100 chakra and therefore Tenten has 25. Everything in the Naruto world works by basing it off other people in the Naruto world. However, in the prospect of comparing Tenten to Kinkaku and Ginkaku, we have a slight problem. See, unfortunately for us and the Gold and Silver brothers, the only time we ever see them in battle is after their death, and more specifically, after they were brought back through the means of Edo Tensei. Now, the thing about Edo Tensei is that while it doesn't give you unlimited chakra, it does give you limitless refills on your chakra. And therefore, a lot of the people that we saw reincarnated in the 4th Great Shinobi World War were stronger than they might have been while they were alive. Now, obviously, this isn't the circumstance for people who died of old age like Hiruzen or Hashirama, but we don't know the circumstances of Kinkaku and Ginkaku's deaths. They could have been brought back in their relative primes, and their ability to spam use the 6 past treasured tools could possibly be tied into the fact that they had infinitely refilling chakra. And now, obviously, on top of that, they were also pseudo Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and also were distant relatives of Hagoromo. So even without the pseudo Jinchuriki-ness of Kurama, they probably had an insane amount of chakra to begin with, probably more than any Senju out there. Though one could argue, obviously, that the Senju are also distant relatives of Hagoromo. But since the Senju were never referred to in that capacity, we can believe that Kinkaku and Ginkaku were probably somehow more closely related to Hagoromo. Though considering he was a man who lived about 2,000 years ago, you can only be so closely related. So where am I going with this? Well, obviously we see Tenten get tapped out of chakra after using the Basho Sen twice. However, who's to say that Kinkaku and Ginkaku, while they were alive and not Jinchurikis of the Nine-Tails, could use the Basho Sen more than twice? See, as they are the only people that we've ever seen pick up this legendary fan and wave it, we have no perception of truly how much chakra it takes to swing it in the first place. While one could look at Tenten's inability to swing the Basho Sen more than twice as a weakness, others could look at it as a strength. See, we understand that there are legendary weapons in the Naruto universe that choose their wielders. The best example of which being Samehada, who will prick your finger with fangs if you pick it up, and he doesn't like your chakra. I don't know why I gendered a sword. And therefore the possibility of Tenten not only being able to pick up this legendary fan, but also swing it even once, let alone twice, should actually be regarded as an incredible feat. I mean, this was a weapon used by Hagoromo, the Sage of Six Paths, the man who spread ninju all across the globe. Being able to wield the same weapon as him is actually rather impressive. So sure, your average Naruto's fan gut reaction to is Tenten a Senju might be an immediate no. But your more seasoned Naruto fan, those who watch my videos, those who understand the texts, understand that when it comes to Naruto, you always have to keep an open mind. So come with me down the path of self-exploration as I show you the true fate of what was once the strongest clan in the world, as we explore the idea, is Tenten a Senju? See, there are plenty of base level connections that one could make between Tenten and the Senju. Hair color, eye color, the fact that she exists within Konoha. But none of this is compelling evidence, and therefore I'd like to move towards our first piece of at least somewhat compelling evidence. See, amongst the Konoha 13, Tenten has always been unique. And not because she was the only person who got a free chiropractic appointment from Temari. And not even because nowadays she just runs a failing weapon shop. No, you see, Tenten was always unique for another reason. And that reason was, of all of the original Konoha 12, Tenten was the only one without a surname. Ino, Yamanaka, Kiba, Inazuka, Naruto, Uzumaki, Hinata, Hyuga, Neji, Hyuga, Shikamaru, Nara, Choji, Akamichi, Shino, Aburame, even ninjas in the Konoha 12 who didn't come from prestigious ninja families like Sakura, Haruno, and Rock Lee all had surnames. Every single one of them, even ninjas who were abandoned by the clan that they had the surname of, like Naruto. Though saying that Naruto was abandoned by the Uzumaki when they were all just wiped off the face of the planet is a bit of a stretch. So why? Why is Tenten the only member in the Konoha 12 who doesn't have a surname? Now, some will say that her first name is Ten and her last name is Ten, and therefore Ten is her surname, but that's not true. She only has one name, Tenten. Now, others will say it's because she only appears in 15 total chapters of Naruto, and therefore there was never really any reason to give her a surname. But that doesn't make sense. Hayate Gecko, the guy who supervised the first Chunin exams, got a surname, and he is in substantially less of the story than Tenten. So what is the real reason that Tenten doesn't have a surname? Well, in order to better understand that, we need to take a step back in Konoha's history. See, when the village was first starting, as a meeting between the Uchiha and the Senju to create a village where they could coexist peacefully, there were two somewhat warring ideologies between these two clans, with Madara leading one ideology stating that the Uchiha shouldn't interbreed and should live with themselves, essentially guaranteeing the kind of lifestyle that the Uchihas would later form into in the later days of Konoha's history, where they lived in a compound and interbred to keep the purity of the Sharingan, and existed more as a sovereign state within Konoha than actual members of Konoha. Now, obviously, they were somewhat forced into that situation by Hiruzen, but if Madara had it his way, that would have happened long before Hiruzen had to do anything. Now, obviously, this was largely stemming from the fact that Madara was in a never-ending war against the ideology of the Senju. He himself was unable to break himself out of the cycle of hatred. And even though he had lost his brother Izuna and lost in a battle to Hashirama and Tobirama, who had spared him, and even though they had come together and created this village, that ideology never left Madara. However, in a story as old as time, whatever ideology Madara had, Hashirama tried to be the embodiment of the opposite. And thus, instead of having all of the Senju continue to interbreed and grow the strength of the clan, Hashirama sent a message out to all of his clan brothers and sisters. He said to them,
"We are no longer the Senju clan. We are now Konoha.
And our real pride and effort should be focused on strengthening Konoha, not the clan." And thus Hashirama and Tobirama told their entire clan to marry outside of the Senju, to incorporate the incredibly powerful Senju blood into the blood of the city. As if they had continued to strengthen the clan, of course there would be a strong subsection of Konoha in the Senju clan. However, if they married outside of the clan, the entire village would get stronger by having Senju blood pumping through its veins. And thus, in essence, the Senju clan was dissolved, which is why we don't see a massive subsection of Senju in Konoha like we do with the Uchiha, and why Tsunade appears to be the last Senju. See, the Senju were more likely than not only motivated to marry outside of the clan, but also to drop the Senju name, because by abandoning all clan pride, they could focus all of their pride into Konoha. And this makes a lot of sense, because think about it. The Senju clan was just as prosperous, if not more prosperous, than the Uchiha clan. There were thousands of them. At one point, they represented probably half of the population of Konoha. So how, in 3 to 4 generations, could the Senju go from half the population of Konoha to non-existent? It doesn't make sense. How would Tsunade be the last Senju? Unless she wasn't. See, Tsunade isn't the last Senju, she's just the last to bear the Senju name. Because Tsunade comes from Senju royalty. She's Hashirama's grandchild. She is the princess of the Senju, the princess of Konoha. And thus, in order to represent the lineage and pay homage to Hashirama, one of the greatest men in Konoha's history, she holds on to the name. But the Senju marrying outside of the clan and dropping their names makes more sense than just there's no Senju. Konoha is also the strongest village in Naruto, with only really the Hidden Cloud giving them a run for their money. And that's most likely because Hagoromo probably had another lineage that grew up in the Hidden Cloud. That's where Kinkaku and Ginkaku came from. But we know that in Naruto, genetics mean a lot. And therefore, how could Konoha, which had no advantages outside of the two clans that came together to form it, truly become the strongest village by far? And to that I say, genetics intermarrying, specifically of the Senju, because we know the Uchiha didn't do it, which leaves us with only one option, the Senju. And it's not like we don't know of Senju members marrying outside of the clan. Hashirama was very famously married to Mito Uzumaki, and his marriage was a political move to strengthen the connection between the Uzumaki and Konoha. So Hashirama was setting the precedent. So Tenten not having a surname could be symbolic of the fact that she hails from the Senju, who abandoned their surnames in solidarity with the village they were building. Point for the theory. On top of that, let's keep talking about that surname, Senju. Technically, Senju in Japanese means 1,000 tasks, and the name is supposed to represent the fact that the Senju weren't specialists in anything. In fact, they were just good at everything. This was supposed to contradict the incredibly singular powers of the Uchiha and their Sharingan. But if there's one thing that could possibly tie Tenten to the Senju clan, it is her proclivity for picking things up incredibly quickly. See, Hashirama used a lot of things in his arsenal. He used Wood Release, he used Sage Mode, but he also used a ton of Kenjutsu. In fact, when Hashirama wasn't using his Wood Release, he's often seen with a massive scroll filled with weapons, with obviously the most iconic being Hashirama's massive Buster Sword. But this is the true power of the Senju, diversity in their power and the chakra to back it up, that ties largely into a mastery and a proclivity for Kenjutsu, which Hashirama is the representation of. And thus, the powers of Tenten's kit should sound somewhat familiar. See, now obviously the connection between Hashirama has a scroll filled with weapons and Tenten's entire kit is filling scrolls with weapons is a bit shallow. But when you consider the last name of the Senju, the 1,000 Tasks, and the fact that they as a clan were well known for their ability to do everything, the connection starts to get a bit thicker. Now, one could obviously argue that Tenten doesn't do everything. And in that capacity, you would be correct. She rarely, if never, uses ninjutsu or genjutsu and barely uses taijutsu. Basically, all she uses is kenjutsu. However, so far as it pertains to kenjutsu, she is genius. See, the Basho Sen isn't the only weapon that Tenten has ever picked up and mastered like that. See, every weapon that Tenten has ever picked up, she has picked up and mastered like that. Even just prior to picking up the Basho Sen and using it against Kakuzu, she picked up a massive ball and chain weapon that she was able to use with mastery in a matter of seconds. And that is a level of skill over multiple different things that I would tie into the idea of the 1,000 Tasks. See, sure, obviously Tenten hasn't mastered ninjutsu or taijutsu or genjutsu, but she has mastered kenjutsu to the point where the 1,000 tasks that she can pick up and have mastery in everything are just individual weapons that she may or may not have bumped into yet. And some of those weapons that she's mastered include sacred tools of the Sage of Six Paths, which for all we know might actually have a caveat that only those who are closely related to Hagoromo are able to use, as the only other wielders of these weapons have been Kinkaku and Ginkaku, who are very well notably connected to Hagoromo. But you know who else is connected to Hagoromo? Tenten. That is, if she was a Senju. On top of all of this, to go back to the scroll thing, it's oddly specific. See, obviously we do see tons of ninjas hide weapons in scrolls. Sasuke does it, Kakashi does it, lots of people do it. It's largely more effective than carrying a bunch of demon shurikens on you. But at the level of sealing multiple weapons, and I mean dozens of weapons, we only ever seen two people do that. The first is Tenten and the second is Hashirama. So even though that connection is a bit shallow, it's hard to ignore. I know what you're saying.
Nick, there's no possible way that Tenten is a representation of the Senju.
She's too weak to be a member of the Senju. She's the weakest out of the Konoha 13. And while you are right, she is definitely one of the weaker of the Konoha 13, if not maybe the weakest. It's actually not even that much of an indictment. See, obviously when we think about the Senju, we think about the big names like Tsunade, Hashirama, Tobirama, true wig splitters, some of the strongest ninjas in history, all sharing one last name that they tie a lot of their power to. Not every Senju was Hashirama. That's why Hashirama was in charge. Just like how not every Uchiha is Itachi. That's why he killed them all. Sure, your average Senju had much higher life force and chakra pools than your other average Lee or Haruno. That doesn't mean that every Senju was Kage material. Bearing the Senju name, or lack thereof, doesn't mean that one day you're gonna become the strongest person on Earth. For thousands of years, it just meant that you're gonna be battling against an Uchiha with either 1 or 3 Tomei Sharingan, which was impressive, obviously, but it doesn't mean that you're some planet-busting foe. And honestly, some of those base Senju probably were weaker than Tenten. I mean, let's remember that Tenten, during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, was able to destroy, I believe, 2 of Kakuzu's masks. And this was Edo Kakuzu, with infinitely refilling chakra and a somewhat, I guess, prime body, if you could consider any iteration of an Earth Grudge Fear body prime. That's an impressive feat. That's the 5th strongest Akatsuki member. That's a man that battled against Hashirama without Earth Grudge Fear and survived. And yet Tenten was able to destroy half of him. Well, obviously looking at Tenten through the comparison of the other Konoha 13, she's gonna seem weak, but she is a Jonin for the Leaf, which is a high bar for the rest of the world. And sure, she may not have as much chakra as your average Senju, but there's a track record for that. See, chakra pool is incredibly genetic, and the further you are removed from the big old chakra pool grandparent or parent in your lineage, the less chakra you have. I mean, look at Boruto. Boruto is Naruto's son, and Naruto had more chakra than Kurama because Kurama ran out first in Baryon mode. Now, whether or not you want to attribute that to Kurama using more chakra so he dies and Naruto doesn't, that's your own thing. But for the sake of today's argument, we're gonna say that Naruto had more chakra than the strongest tailed beast in existence. And because of that, Naruto, without even accessing the entirety of Kurama's chakra, was able to create hundreds of clones. 1 generation later, Boruto can create 3 or 4, I don't remember. That is a massive step down in chakra pool. And it's not even like his mom doesn't have a lot of chakra. She's the princess of the Hyuga. And the Hyuga, while they've never been regarded for having tons of chakra, are descendants of Hamura, Hagoromo's brother. And Hinata, as the head of the Hyuga and the princess of the Hyuga, is as closely related to Hamura as any of the Hyuga. And obviously, the Hyuga need a lot of chakra to funnel power into their Byakugan. So a track record for people marrying outside of their clan and therefore losing some of the clan advantages is absolutely there. But the beauty of marrying outside the clan is that you can interbreed the greatest aspects of two clans into future children. So what if Ten did lose the chakra pool of the Senju, but she held on to the Kenjutsu of the Senju and the 1,000 tasks ability to pick up whatever they put their hands on immediately, and is actually living as a physical representation of the modern day influence of the Senju clan. Seems to make a lot of sense to me. The normalcy that the Senju clan has been able to achieve in Konoha, while some might see it as a downgrade, a rising tide lifts all boats. Sure, to think of Ten as the representation of how far the Senju clan has fallen is somewhat depressing. But that's only when you think about the Senju clan through the eyes of Hashirama and Tobirama and Tsunade. But in reality, that Senju blood pumping its way into the body that is Konoha and strengthening all the future generations of ninja is a triumph. Ten lives as a physical embodiment of Hashirama's will to make sure that the Senju clan dissipates into Konoha and strengthens it in its entirety. And that's kind of awesome. But what do you guys think? Do you believe that Ten could be a Senju? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Oh, that tasted like sushi.